wasn't until the day of the draft my agent told me that he had a good feeling that I was going to go first round. Going into the debut, I was pretty nervous. It ended up being terrible. It was just brutal. I was crushed after the game. I thought, okay, this was my chance. And I lost my chance. Even if I want to complain, I know it's not going to change anything. And so I usually just try to think like, okay, those kinds of things are out of my control. And things like working on mental skills such as journaling, meditating, working with sports psychologists, I think that that's all helped me to make that mindset shift. No matter what, finding ways to have fun and never forgetting that, I think, is key. I think you have to love all of it and kind of embrace even the stuff that you don't like in order to last and to succeed.
Welcome to the Winners Club podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Wilson, and today I'm here with professional soccer player for FC Dallas, Sam Junqua. Sam, thanks for being here.
Happy to be here.
So we're going to get into your mindset and also what it's like being a professional athlete. But first, I want to hear about your journey to become a professional athlete. So let's start from the beginning. What are your first memories playing soccer?
My first memories playing soccer would be probably watching my big brother, who's 3 years older than me, playing recreational soccer and wanting to do it myself. And so I started playing as well. I think I was maybe about 6 or 7 years old.
When did the dream to become a pro come into picture?
It wasn't until I was maybe 10 or 11 years old that I decided, I wanted to go pro and didn't know what it took to get there. I just saw kind of some players that inspired me and led me to want to achieve that.
Right. And so since you didn't end up making it, what are some things that you did differently from other athletes in high school to make that dream a reality? So whether it was extra training, staying later, or other sacrifices? I
think I enjoyed the game to a different level than a lot of the people around me. Mm-hmm. To me, it wasn't necessarily extra training. It was, I've got a day where I don't have training and I kind of want to go have fun with the ball. Mm-hmm. And so I'd play with kids from my neighborhood or from my team. Mm-hmm. And then there was the side of obviously sacrificing kind of from an early age, focusing on things like my diet and, working on my fitness, making sure that school was in order so that I would never have an issue where, it would start to bother soccer because I had to take care of school. Throughout my youth career, I made sure to make the necessary sacrifices to hopefully have a chance to play professionally.
Worked because you were able to make it to D1 level to play for UC Berkeley. So even at that level, pretty much every player at the D1 level would like to go pro, but what would you do differently from other athletes? How do you separate yourself at the college level?
I think one of the things that I did differently from other college players is in college, you have a lot of choices. I think there's so many things that are pulling for your attention and you can't say yes to all of them. And I think that some people make the mistake of thinking that they can take on more than they actually can. I understood that, I couldn't have it all and I had to choose. And so going into that with that understanding, I didn't feel like I needed to get kind of the college experience, like some other people might have felt. And so I was willing to give certain things up and choose early on what mattered to me and prioritize.
Well, that is easier said than done. At college, there's a lot of different things going on, people, parties, events. So how did you avoid those distractions and focus on school and becoming a professional soccer player?
If I'm being honest, parties never appealed to me too much. Mm-hmm. Like they always joke that, I was kind of an old soul because I never liked staying up late. Mm-hmm. I always felt like getting sleep was hard enough in college. Right. So I didn't need to, make decisions that took away more sleep. Mm-hmm. But I do think I went to UC Berkeley. Berkeley's a fun city. The Bay Area is fun. There were things that I wanted to do and I didn't feel like I could reasonably fit in with my schedule. Mm-hmm. And so, those were some things that were harder to give up. Like maybe I wanted to go with some friends to San Francisco for the day and, but maybe we had a game coming up or, I needed to take care of some other stuff. And so those kinds of sacrifices were a little bit more difficult. But, looking back, I don't regret it. I think that those were necessary to get me to where I am now.
Yeah, because the sacrifices paid off because after graduating, you were drafted number 8 in the MLS Draft. So what was the lead up to the draft process like? And then what were the feelings afterward when you realized you were drafted in the first round, top 10?
Yeah, I had a pretty unique experience going into the draft. So my 4 years at Cal, we didn't perform too well as a team the whole time. And I ended up playing a number of different positions. I played center back, outside back, center mid, winger even. And I think that bouncing around didn't help me either to kind of establish one position to be noticed. So I wasn't really on the radar of teams coming out of my senior season. So I had my work cut out for me. I had to try to get noticed through combines, which a lot of people attend after their senior year. I got invited just to the local combine, the San Jose Earthquakes combine, initially. And I actually played for them as a youth, so maybe that factored into it as well. And then I signed with the agent that I'm currently with, and he helped me get into the Atlanta United combine. So I went to both Atlanta's and San Jose's. And then my agent, along with my college coach, were able to get me into the invite-only. There's a Las Vegas combine where there were a number of teams there. I think it was like Columbus Crew, Toronto, Houston Dynamo were there that ended up drafting me, Seattle Sounders, and maybe another team or two. And so I went to that one, and I performed well again. And a number of those teams, they submitted my name to the league to get me into the MLS Combine. And so I think somebody dropped out, maybe it was an injury. And so I was the last invite to the MLS Combine. I did well there again, and this time in front of the whole league. The MLS Draft was coming up a couple of days after that, but that wasn't on my radar at all because that's just first and second round. At this stage, I'm still just trying to get drafted, get an opportunity in preseason with the team. And so I flew home. It was in Orlando, so I flew home to California instead of going to Chicago. I still, teams weren't very clear about their intentions. I didn't know if I was going to go on the first day, in the first or second round. So I ended up just staying with my family, watching it on TV, didn't attend the draft. And it wasn't until the day of the draft my agent told me that he had a good feeling that I was going to go first round. And so that was really exciting. Still didn't know where. And then, they called my name for the Houston Dynamo. And so that was a really cool moment. To start the process, I had never expected to be drafted, anywhere near that high. And so that was a special moment where I felt like a lot of the work that I had put in, which largely felt kind of unrecognized for the duration that I was in college, kind of was being recognized finally. And it changed so quickly. It was a really exciting time.
Once you got there, how was that transition from college to the MLS? Was it a big jump, major shock to the system, or was it a smooth transition?
I think on any given day, I felt like I could be at the level of all the other guys at training, and I don't think that was the challenge, which I didn't realize until the season progressed. But I was feeling good in preseason, doing well, and then as the season went on, it was harder, different sorts of adversity to overcome that and to play at a consistent level throughout the whole year. And it's a long season. You're training every day. You're training more and at a higher intensity than previously in college and then in academy. And so I found that was the part that was really challenging and made me realize, okay, this is the difference, and I had to get used to that.
Just the monotony of just doing it over and over, trainings, games.
It's almost the opposite. It's not always the same, but your level has to be the same, which is the hard part. There's so much travel in the MLS, and even more so because I was playing on occasion on the weekend for the second team, which was a flight away. And so even for the home games, I'm flying and staying in a hotel. And all those things, it added up, wasn't sleeping too well, over the course of the year, probably wasn't recovering as well as I needed, as much as I tried. And I felt like that, with all the difficult things, all the, new things that I had to overcome, still keeping my level at what it needed to be, that was the hard part, all these challenges just being thrown at you.
Right. Speaking of the USL team, your first year with Houston Dynamo, they had you play with the USL team, which is common for most professional soccer players. But the difference with Houston Dynamo is that the USL team is a whole flight away. So you had to fly like almost every other week to get to trainings and games. It sounds glamorous, but I know it had to take some type of toll on you. So
Yeah.
how did you deal with that? How did you get through that difficult period?
At first, I didn't do a good job of it. It stressed me out. I liked, having my routine, for game day and so on, and the day before game. And that was kind of thrown all out the window because I would get a text Thursday as I'm falling asleep that I'm going to go play on the weekend on Saturday with the second team. And so I had to quickly pack my bag. I would still go to the first team training. I would train and then go straight to the airport. And then I would go from the airport when I landed in RGV to the stadium for the second team because they would train in the evening and I would participate in like half the training. Mm-hmm. And so, all day I'm out doing stuff, training, twice in a way. And come game day, a lot of times I would feel terrible. Like, I have a roommate, like I'm not sleeping, in my own bed and having to try to, prepare for a game in that way, in that hectic environment, I found was really difficult. And so I think a couple of things probably helped with it. I think accepting instead of resisting, the challenges and not trying to change it, but trying to work with it and see like what I could do within that to still perform instead of making excuses. And speaking to a sports psychologist also helped me to kind of, make that mindset shift and try to kind of handle all the stresses that I had in that first year.
Well, you were able to overcome the stresses of the first year and eventually were able to make your debut with the first team. After all you've gone through with the first year, what was the experiences like and the feelings like before, during, and after that debut?
Going into the debut, I was pretty nervous. I had a really good week of training, but I kind of picked up an injury during that week as well, where my knee was just killing me. And I hadn't played a game, I think, in a month, and previously that game that I had played was with the second team, so it wasn't even with the first team. And so going into the game, I was kind of nervous about if I'd be able to last the whole game, how I'd do. And then during the game, I would say things started out pretty well. It was in the middle of the summer, it was Open Cup, and as the game went on, I think my lack of fitness kind of showed and I was struggling and it ended up being terrible. Like towards the end of the game, like I think I got exposed a couple times. But like, it was just, honestly, that second half of the game was like a miserable experience. And like, it was just brutal. I was crushed after the game. And, that was the only game that I played my first year. I didn't know it at the time, but like, I knew that it didn't go well. And so that was hard. I think, when you really want something to go a certain way, I really wanted it to go well, and it doesn't. I think it's hard to accept, and it had been a moment that I had been kind of prepping for the whole season, kind of waiting on, and for it to come in that way, it was really tough. It was hard on me for sure.
So it was bittersweet. You finally got that debut, but it wasn't what you hoped for. Mm-hmm. How'd you bounce back from that and come stronger the next year?
Already at that point, the second half of the season was difficult. Like I had mentioned before, I was experiencing a lot of stress physically. I didn't feel like I was able to recover as well. I'd come directly from my college season into that, and it was a more demanding season than I was used to as well. And so I think the second half of the season, especially towards the end of the season, I was just counting down the days, trying to do my best, but I honestly didn't feel like, I didn't feel like I had more to give. And it was just like trying to get through it, and that was just the reality, of that year and of that moment in my career where, I was completely burnt out.
How would you sum up your time with the Dynamo? I mean, at Dynamo, you had everything from starting scoring goals to dealing with injuries and dealing with the USL period. So what were the biggest lessons you learned during your time with the Dynamo?
I used to compare a lot with other players, how I was doing and how my, transition to pro was, and, especially with the guys in my draft class. And I feel like I've gotten better about not comparing myself as much and not focusing on others, and, because no two players have the same experience. And, in this game, you have to have a little bit of luck, and, it comes at different times. Some people it comes early, and some people it takes a little bit of time. And I feel like I was one of the ones where it wasn't smooth for me in the beginning. And, honestly, most of my time at the Dynamo, it wasn't smooth, and it felt like the wind was in my face instead of, going with me. And learning to accept that and try to do what I can within that is one of the biggest takeaways that I have with my time there.
After Dynamo, you signed with FC Dallas, which is actually Houston's rival. Did you get any criticism and flack for that?
A little bit, but honestly, Houston made the decision, right, as well, to trade me. And I was hardly a Houston player at the time anyway, because I wasn't under contract, and maybe a tiny bit from the fans, but it was mostly joking.
Okay, all right. Well, then how was your transition from Houston to FC Dallas?
It's been good. I joined at the beginning of 2023. I think it could have been a little bit smoother if I was able to participate in preseason that year, but because the trade didn't go through until after preseason had finished, essentially, it made the transition a little bit more difficult. And by the time that I was trying to assimilate with the team and to win over the coach, we were already playing games, and the coach is already focused on the group that's playing. And so, it was unfortunate that I didn't get that opportunity, but, over time I felt like I was able to show my qualities and to carve out more opportunities for myself. And so I've really enjoyed it.
And with FC Dallas, you've been able to play and start in many games, including the one with Lionel Messi. So can you talk about that game? How was that experience for you?
Yeah, it was really cool. It was a preseason game, so it wasn't maybe as intense as the one that was at Toyota Stadium during Leagues Cup. But it was a really cool experience, kind of surreal playing so close to guys that I grew up watching. And overall just a really cool experience. I think it's cool when the sport you love gives you these kinds of opportunities.
Right. And so that was a bit about your story. So now we can get into your mindset. So first off, are there any things you do to take care of your mental health? Like, how do you deal with the highs and lows of your sport?
I'd say I do a couple things. I'm big on meditation. I think that it helps to kind of center me and kind of keep me from, being too emotional or kind of to be too influenced by the things around me. Helps me to stay more even-keeled. Another thing that I like doing is journaling. I think that kind of putting pen to paper like that, and you have all these thoughts and emotions that are kind of bottled up, and when you kind of allow some of that to kind of spill out, it feels less like there's stuff trying to burst out of you, and you kind of like get it out and almost kind of deal with it in that way. And so I'm big on that, especially like before a game. There's a lot of emotion and a lot of thoughts, and I try to release some of that and kind of I think that helps me going into the game.
And you mentioned earlier working with a sports psychologist. Mm-hmm. Was that provided by MLS or the Dynamo or FC Dallas, or was that something you had to go out and reach out to?
So initially, at the beginning of my career, it was somebody that I'd worked with while I was at UC Berkeley. Mm-hmm. And I continued to work with him when I became a professional player. And then I've also worked with somebody through Houston Dynamo as well. And so it's been multiple kind of people that I've worked with.
Right. And something people might not know about you is that you work with pet shelters by fostering kittens. And I think at one point you had like 19 kittens at once. Is that true?
Honestly, I don't remember how many kittens, but it was just, I think we had 2 litters at one time because there was an overlap for a couple of days.
Right. And why is that important to foster pets, and then how does it help you as an athlete?
Personally, I really love animals. As animals are something that I'm passionate about, fostering, volunteering with organizations, rescues and shelters. I think that that's something that brings me a lot of meaning, and I do it together with my fiance, and so we're on the same page with that, and I wanted to see how I could help, and I felt like what we typically do is we foster kittens because that's kind of the easiest thing for our lifestyle. I think a puppy is a little bit more difficult, and kittens are often the most at risk of being put down at shelters, and so since we already had a cat at the time, we felt comfortable kind of dabbling with fostering, and so we started fostering our first cat. I think it was in 2020 during the quarantine period, and then since then we've fostered many kittens. As far as how it helps soccer, I think that it just keeps me more well-rounded. I think that it's something that kind of gets my mind off of the game a little bit, kind of puts things into perspective as to what's important and what I'm kind of inflating in my mind in terms of importance and kind of worrying about too much. And so I think it kind of helps to relax me.
Does it help you stay calm? Because you seem like a calm person. How do you deal with that in the game? Or how do you stay calm in the game when you're nervous or excited or angry or frustrated? How do you stay calm?
I think in the heat of the moment, I just try to focus on the next play. I think especially after a mistake, I usually just try to scan and look around and kind of gather information, trying to think, okay, what do I need to do next, to help myself and to help the team. And so I think moving on quickly and start trying to focus on the next thing is what helps me to not kind of dwell on a mistake.
Okay. And you mentioned back in high school, one thing you made a point to do was to have fun and just play games outside of your trainings with teammates or friends. Are you able to do some of that here? Like, how do you keep soccer fun, even though it's a business and you're training every day, day in and day out? How do you still maintain fun?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that aspect looks a little bit different now because, we're training every day and we're also, I think, carefully monitoring our load. So I can't, even if I like playing tech ball with teammates, I can't be doing that for, an hour after training because, that ends up being too much. I think for me, it has been being more present, and to be grateful for every day that I get to go to train, and I might not enjoy every aspect of it, but I try to find the parts that I do enjoy and focus on that, and to find moments to have fun and to have perspective of, how fortunate I am to be playing professional soccer just as I wanted. I got what I wanted, and so I'm just I try to remind myself of how fortunate I am and to find ways to enjoy it within our routine.
Right. To reach the professional level, you have the mentality of the 1% to get to achieve your dream. So if you had to pick one, what would be like a mental weakness maybe that you might have had to deal with throughout your career or something that you're still dealing with?
One thing that comes to mind is I used to have a temper when I was younger, and I had a hard time controlling it, and so...
I wouldn't be able to tell. I didn't know.
Yeah, I think I've definitely chilled out over the years, and that's helped me to become more consistent because I felt like when I was younger, the feedback I would get is that, I was too inconsistent, and, if I started off the game bad, then it would often go from bad to worse. And if I started off the game good, then it would just, I would gain confidence and I would do well. But they wanted to see me be more consistent and to be able to bounce back from mistakes and difficult things. And I think that being better about my emotions, I think, things like working on mental skills such as journaling, meditating, working with sports psychologists, I think that that's all helped me to relax a little bit more and to not be as up and down as I used to be.
Do you have any techniques like in the game, in the moment when maybe a ref makes a bad call, and I don't know if you yell at the ref or something like that, but how you control your emotions in that regard?
Yeah, I think it's just what I spoke about previously of like just focusing on the next play. Like even if I want to complain, I know it's not going to change anything, and so I usually just try to think like, okay, like where do I need to be, on this next play, and kind of realize that those kinds of things are out of my control, and I don't need to waste any energy on them.
So you've given us some great insights so far. So now we can get into the final five. These are the final 5 questions I like to ask every athlete. So the first question is, what's a misconception about being a professional athlete?
I think that one thing that I didn't realize, and I think a lot of people don't realize, is that being a professional athlete doesn't mean your job is to just go out and play soccer. I think there's so much more that goes into it. Off of the field, kind of frustrating things such as like the politics of soccer and the business side of soccer, the lifestyle of being a professional athlete. I think you have to love, all of it and kind of embrace even the stuff that you don't like the politics of the game, in order to last and to succeed.
Okay. The next one is, what's a memory that at the time felt like the worst in your career, but now you can look back at it and laugh?
Maybe my debut with Dynamo.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so broken after that game, but now I look back and I'm like, man, that was terrible. That was not fun. But I got through it, and now it doesn't feel like as much of a big deal, like with more games under my belt. But at the moment, it felt like a really defining moment. So it was hard.
And then opposite of that, what's the best memory of your career?
I'd say maybe one of them was to start off the 2021 season. I was starting, but then I ended up getting injured. I had a concussion, and so I was out for a while. And I came back, and soon after I got the opportunity to start a game away at LAFC. And I knew it was going to be a tough game. Felt a little bit nervous about it, but the game ended up going really well. I played well, and I felt such a sense of relief that with that performance, I was going to get more opportunities. And that was something that I was worried about. Once I got injured in preseason, I thought, okay, this was my chance. I was a starter, and we were going to start the season with me as a starter, and I lost my chance. And then it felt really good to be able to prove that, no, I'm going to get other chances, and I'm going to be able to take advantage of them. And
you've already given some great advice, but what's some advice you could give to younger athletes that want to be in your position, that want to be pro athletes? What's some advice they could give them?
A lot of times the advice I give people is to make sure you continue having fun with it. I think that I've seen a lot of people who have maybe gotten too serious about it and have taken the fun out of the game. And most often those are the players that end up kind of stopping before they are able to reach the level that they want to. And so no matter what, finding ways to have fun and never forgetting that, I think is key, even for us professionals.
All right, and the last question, how do you define the word winner? It's not anyone else's definition of the word winner, but after a game, whether you actually won the game or lost the game, how do you tell yourself that you won?
I'd say first and foremost, for me personally, I think it's walking off the field knowing that you did everything you could in that game, and not just in those 90 minutes, but in the preparation, everything. Feeling at peace, when the final whistle blows, that you did everything and you don't have any regrets. And then I think it also comes with, the way you respond after the game. Say you won the game, do you feel content and kind of, happy with that? Or do you want to keep that going? If you didn't win, then are you going to do the hard work to learn from it and to come back better? I think that the response afterwards, after the result, is also, I think, what defines a winner as well.